Hi, fantasy readers. This is Corinne Norton, your fellow book binger, and you are listening to the Finding Fantasy Reads podcast, where you can test out a new fantasy story every single week to find your next favorite author. Today's story has a unique wintry and eerie vibe to it. It stuck with me long after I first read it, and I knew I wanted to feature it on the podcast. It's written by L.S. Wolfe, who is a writer, teacher, proud United States Army veteran, husband to a beautiful wife, and father of 2 wonderful boys. He holds a degree in television and radio broadcasting and a master's in teaching middle school English, which, honestly, that is the most impressive credential on his list in my opinion. Wrangling middle school kids and getting them to read books and write papers, that makes him a hero. When choosing a book, he looks for stories of real people who faced insurmountable odds and pulled through. But he also enjoys a good science fiction or fantasy novel about not-so-real people. Today's story is narrated by Paeter Frandsen, host of Christian Geek Central. Stick around to the end, or check out today's show notes to see where you can find more from both the author and the narrator. For now, please enjoy The Queen's Sight by L.S. Wolfe.
This tale is no less believable than the stories of old, of Alasdair the Free, who created the wind of the air to fill our sails and unchained our people from the muck beneath our feet. And lest we forget Elspeth and her band of winged white horses, who took flight during the final accord, and promised all who would ever live and die that she'd return one day to save us all. Myths, legends, many claim, but all beings feel Alasdair's presence, a gentle guiding breeze, a wrathful storm, and who among the living, in the face of death and danger, believer or unbeliever, prays to any other than Elspeth? If so few among our kind, with evidence in hand, be it tangible or of faith within, are unwilling to recognize the gods, why would mere men trust the words written on this scrap of parchment? If this should reach learned hands, it will surely be cast into a flame. If I should stand before our king, he will no doubt have me hanged. Fearful I may be, and weary of mind, body, and soul, but no liar am I. Indeed, I am not without fault. All leaders of men play the fastuous tyrant, for a moment or for a lifetime. But I left every ounce of self-idolatry on that black sand beach, among the wreckage of our Lord's ship, the Maiden's Keeper, and beneath her scattered crew, those much less fortunate than I. The exact words of my companions have been lost to the sea and to the continent. However, what I can recall with near perfection is the tone in which their words were spoken, their feelings of desperation, fear, and hopelessness. With that being said, please forgive my brevity, my lack of detail henceforth. I write to inform, to honor truth, and must take care not to embellish. I call upon Missara to grasp this quill, to guide my hand with temperance. My own spoken words, I confess, are not exact. To say any of the preceding conversations are verbatim on behalf of both parties would be false. I remember a conversation with Lieutenant Gemmel mere hours before the destruction of the Maiden. He was looking off her stern, staring out at the dim horizon. I followed suit, but saw only open sea, the stars in the night sky, and, near to the ship, the occasional floating sheet of ice. I dared not speak first, nor leave his side prior to him speaking. I was feeling quite cold. Then he spoke. "Sergeant Keir, our pursuers are more determined than we expected, and the captain knows this." Another swing of Alasdair's fist struck the sails. The stoic Gemmel stood fast, frost in his bushy beard, that which concealed a care-worn face, yet not a tear on his red, wind-swept cheeks. I strained to see what he had seen, but there was nothing save for ghostly fog over the water. "Shall I ready our men?" I asked. Several moments passed once more. Then he said, "We will stay this course. He wants to lose them in the ice." Why are they after us? They'll surely turn back, won't they? My voice broke with pity, which he no doubt sensed. I suspect we have something they want, he said, unpatronizing. Sergeant, when I give the order, our men will secure their bootlaces. Have them tied off on the second loop of their trousers, left-hand side. They'll keep their overcoats unbuttoned. Everyone will sling a ration pack. No one in the hold. No one sleeps. I nodded obediently. That was the last we spoke. We sat knees to chest in a huddled mass, no warmth save for the man on either side. The weariest of our poor lot sat in the middle of our ring. There were 3, the captain's steward and 2 young men from the galley. None were in uniform when the maiden devastatingly struck the ice, and the sea took her. Nevertheless, it worked in their favor. We shielded them from the frigid air which danced across the water, the ice, leaped onto the shore, and crept into our overcoats. If these were my own subordinates, would I have felt such envy? I held my breath with each calm of the wind. When I exhaled, the icy claw would once again tear at my back. Few words were spoken. Several sailors formed a cabal and made off with the lifeboats, a demoralizing event, to put it mildly. And how we found ourselves in such a situation, I know not. As for the men to either side of me, I did not recognize them. Hung heads and the blackest of nights obfuscated identity. The man to my right was still radiating some warmth, breathing. I said, "It feels nice to sit here. It's safe. But for us to stay here, unmoving, it's what this place wants." My words seemed to have roused the old sailor from a stupor. He lifted his chin slightly, grunted, and fell silent. Hopelessness, misery. Such terrible maladies passed from one man to another. I know not what drove me to stand, to walk toward the shore, to step upon the ice, to seek out the sea. Did I mean to rescue the others, my own men? Was I searching for salvage, something to help the surviving crew? Did I envy the drowned, and wish for a similar fate? It seemed my sanity had left me. The cold attacks the mind, first of all, then the skin, the muscle, the bones. I know I was clear of head, because if that were not the case, I'd have taken that plunge into the cold, dark deep. Yet here I am, alive. She is to thank. She saved my life. A voice called out from the darkness, wordless. The sound of it warmed me to the bone. How long had it been since I'd heard such tenderness? Must have been the last time I saw dry land, nearly 4 months since that woman at Ancaith. The voice grew nearer and nearer still. I dashed across the ice in search of the source. Suddenly, the voice was gone, and, at my feet, sitting upright in a tuft of snow, was a lantern. It was fully encased by metal, with a conical top, and no flame shone from within. Without hesitation, I picked it up. It had some weight, and it felt warm in my cold hands. As I reach this part of my tale, I fear I'll lose the scholar, the pragmatic gentleman, for our world is rife with unexplained phenomena, untouched and unknown lands beyond our knowledge, towering and magnificent beasts, fire, water, and lightning born from the hands of gifted men and women. However, in the 1,000 years of the written word, no tome exists which documents the dead communicating with the living. "You would be wise to take us inland." I looked over the lantern. Curiously, the voice did not originate from the object. It was not drowned out by the wind or the sea. The voice came from within me. I admit that I was perturbed by this aberration. Was my mind lost? Was I in the final throes of this mortal life? No. What follows is the most real and sobering conversation I had had in recent memory. The words I write hereafter are exact, with no alterations. "Lash me to your hip, young sailor." The voice was solemn, even, yet commanding. I obeyed. "We have a long journey ahead. If you will not speak, don't mind my humming." I began to walk. She started to hum a familiar tune. "I know that one," I said. "Hmm?" "Yes." I picked up the melody where she had left off. "Quite well known. Unfortunately, the name escapes me, but we would sing it proudly on our marches." "Ah, a soldier, then. Forgive me for misjudging you." "Yes, well, now a sergeant in the King's Guard." She went back to humming the march. I found myself in step, left, right, left, right. The tune lightened my load, and I walked with a renewed purpose. It was rejuvenating. I moved quicker now, but took care not to disturb the lantern on my hip. "I strongly advise not returning to your camp." I came to a halt. "They won't survive." "That's correct. And neither will you." "You've not said we. What will become of you?" "I'll remain here for as long as it takes." "Waiting?" "For another fortunate soul." "How can one call this fortunate? I'm talking to a lantern. It's asking me to let good men perish." "If you die here today, good men will certainly perish, and in far greater numbers." If it is not obvious, I chose to leave behind what was left of the maiden's crew. I made this choice with an empty belly, frozen limbs, all while looking southward, into the dark of a perpetual night, into the unknown. The voice did not promise me shelter, warmth, or food, but I trusted it would lead me to that which I desired. No, needed. As for the others, my belief, although perhaps I hold this belief for no other purpose than to sleep through each night, is that someone found the strength to stand on their feet, to lead his brothers, and make the valiant choice that placed the lives of his comrades before his own. I was not that man. "If my memory serves me," she began again, "we'll find a freshwater stream that flows into the sea. Stay on the shore. You'll want to look for anything you can salvage from the wreckage. Food, most importantly." "Huh. I shall be invalided home any day now. Where's the medical officer? I'm still in my bunk, asleep, feverish. You play tricks, voice in my head." "If you wish to mock me, Sergeant of the King's Guard, then do speak up. Someone might take you for a madman." "What with all your muttering?" "These lands have never been charted. To suggest otherwise is madness." "And a blank spot on a map proves not the absence of a world, especially one lost to the ages." That shut us up for a time, and I walked listlessly, listening to the waves lapping onto the shore. This peace was fouled by a most offensive smell. As I walked, and as the odor grew stronger, I recognized it. All men who have inflicted violence on another know this smell. It came from the water's edge, from the rocky hills up the beach, and from under the lifeboats, which had been used for shelter. I saw familiar faces. Judging by their frozen countenances, I could piece together the conflict. There were those who looked angry, and those who looked surprised, but I should not reflect too deeply at this time. I pledge to whomever may read this that I will someday write tribute to the men of the Maiden's Keeper, all 158 who were aboard in that horrible moment when she split in two. Again, however, for the sake of maintaining a succinct recount, and to spare my heart the pain of describing the scenery along my journey forth, I will pass over this part of my story. For the time being, I would not go hungry. I ate my fill and slung as many ration packs as I could comfortably carry. She assured me I had enough, that there would be fresh food soon. "Will you give me your name?" I asked gentlemanly. "I was once a diplomat of sorts. I expect a fair trade." "Of course. My name is Aaron Egan Murray of the Northern Keir clan. sergeant of the king's guard." "That's quite a name. And was there a king on your ship?" "Does a lady not keep her promises?" "A lady might, but not a diplomat." "How would you like to be tossed back into those frigid waters?" "You wouldn't throw away your good luck charm, would you?" "I've heard the tales of castaways, men who spent months, years, on a rock with no other soul to speak of, men who trekked across great plains of snow, ice, endless deserts, or sailed a makeshift raft on the open seas. It was the voice. They would lower their gossip to a whisper and wipe the foam from their mustaches. The din of the bustling tavern vanished. Silence. If not for that voice, the one in here, the teller of tales would say, pointing to his heart, I'd not be sitting here today. When I needed to get up, it told me to stand. When I was thirsty, it told me to save that last drop. When I felt so lonesome I could no longer go on living, it gave me consolation." When these men repeated these words of salvation, they spoke in a boisterous and dignified way, as if the gods were chanting, behaving as spectators might from high among the clouds. Perhaps it was a voice like this. Perhaps these survivors, molded of brawn and metal, felt rather sheepish at the fact. And who does a young man, utterly hopeless and lost, or bloodied and broken on a field of battle, cry out to? "Miriam," she finally said. "A beautiful name." We stopped at a stream, and I knelt by the water's edge. While I sipped the clear, cool water from my palms, I started to hum that tune again. Then the forgotten words came too. "Miriam, our beloved, graceful is thee. Our duty is your will, from the land to the sea. Your watchful eyes, blue as can be. When we sleep, when we fight, your gaze keeps us free. Miriam, our beloved, to my knee, oh, to my knee." I gulped down another handful of water, and Miriam said, "It's time for you to know." I looked at the lantern hanging from my hip. "Grasp the top, turn it clockwise, then pull." I did as she instructed. When the cylinder could turn no more, I heard a metallic click. "Aaron." "Hmm?" "Be gentle with me." This gave me pause. I lifted upward, and with that pull came a glass cylinder. Inside, attached to a vertical rod, were 2 white orbs. In the center of each, a sapphire blue iris. "Queen Miriam's eyes," I whispered. "My soldier, brave and youthful and full of vigor, let us continue our journey." The sun had finally made an appearance over the horizon. Its weak rays warmed my back, but it would not overstay its welcome, so I thought little of this. In any case, Miriam had a way of seeing what could not be seen. We hiked for a long while across a great river of ice, which she called a glacier, and, with so many crevices, each step could have spelled certain death, but this gave us no trouble. Miriam seemed to know where we were going, the paths to take and which to avoid. I know not why I waited so long to question her about this foresight. Perhaps I dared not interrogate a queen. Miriam had long passed. Half a century ago, I recalled. "If you are fatigued, Sergeant Keir, you can rest." "I do not wish to. We are making good distance, and in good time." "How would you know if we are making good time? There could be 10 more miles, or 10,000. "There is moss beneath the snow here. The order of Drawcroth falls farther behind. I no longer feel their cold spears prodding at my nape. I am satisfied with our progress." "Death's hunt takes joy in watching its prey persist. Stay vigilant, Aaron, but I assure you we can rest for a moment." Since she was in my care, I felt no reason to distrust her. I found a soft spot of moss, free of mushy snow, and sat down with a ration. As I ate, I looked at the stars above and questioned my situation further. I am no navigator, but had I, without knowing it, been following Elspeth's path? I counted the stars, 7 in total, a straight line said to bring all who are lost to safety. "Do you believe the goddess will return?" I asked. "Had we not left our own lands, we'd not need saving." She laughed gently and said, "Man will quarrel from room to room in his own home. Father falls to son, brother to brother. It is not freedom of movement which causes strife, but confinement. The beauty of this world should not be barred from any one being, nor guarded by a solitary person or the gods above. However, it is a choice of man and man alone to either ask for permission or, in many cases, take it by force. And as for Elspeth, focus on what is now and believe in what keeps us moving." The last bite of my ration was difficult to swallow. I had devoted much of my life to the gods, my fellow man, my king, and trusted my own heart and soul on these matters. Can all be left to chance? Ha! I was walking aimlessly to the uttermost ends of Talam, conversing and taking lectures from a metal can. Forgive me for my disbelief in these trying times. The sound of crunching snow and ice turned to the clacking of rocks and stone. There was more greenery underfoot. Still, I heard no sounds of wildlife, and I was down to my last ration pack. I picked a flower with golden petals and stuck it in my breast pocket. My body ached. As we climbed in elevation, my lungs burned. At the base of a mountain, we found a hot spring. I removed my overcoat, but before I undressed any further, I placed Miriam's eyes behind a rock. I looked down and saw that my body was covered in red sores. My hands and feet were wrinkled and pallid, but no signs of frostbite. With no way to tell the hours of the day, how long had I traveled? At some point I'm sure I slept, but I can't remember when, where, or for how long. The spring water was scalding hot, but it eased the pain in my muscles and bones. My skin eventually got used to the heat, and I sank lower into the pool. "Kier," said Miriam, "I should tell you that these eyes of mine are symbolic. The spell which bound me to this organ could have attached itself to any part of me." "I am too at ease to feel shame now," I sighed heavily. I was enjoying the relaxation, but curiosity tempted me. "Why your eyes?" "You mean why not the heart, the brain?" "Sure, anything." "That woman you met, at Ancaith, you only knew her for a short while. Did you gaze intently at the folds of her brain, or search for answers in her still beating heart? No, you stared into her eyes." Even in the heat of the hot spring, I felt my face turn red with embarrassment. How could she know such a thing? "The eyes never lie," she continued. "They tell all, the beauty one has witnessed, or the horror. When I lived, I saw much of both. In death, I serve as a reminder of the power one's eyes possess. There are those who would risk everything to have me for their own gain. Others would have me destroyed." "Yes, my commanding officer mentioned pursuers." "Should I be destroyed? You have no doubt considered smashing me upon these rocks. Maybe that would be wise. But we are connected, you and I, our fates intertwined, and I believe there is still good that I can do. We will continue our journey. In the mountains to the south is a castle called Caseline." And with that I walked farther south, through the green and cold meadows and rocky moors. Many days have passed, and I am still searching. There's plenty of fresh water, but little to ease my hunger. I know that when we reach this wondrous keep, there will be stores of food to eat. There will be an armory. I will take up the sword and stand by her dais. I think often of how I might repay her for bringing me to safety. Oh, how fortunate I am. There is much to comfort me on this arduous journey. The sun rises more often now, but still I look to the stars when I feel I am lost. When I feel alone, the Queen speaks. But if my luck should run out, and someone should find these notes on my person before I reach safety. Trust that all I've said is true. Trust that you are of sound mind. The Queen has returned.
I hope you enjoyed listening to The Queen's Sight by L.S. Wolfe, narrated by Paeter Frandsen of Christian Geek Central. If you want to read more by L.S. Wolfe, you'll have to wait until April. The story you just heard is part of an anthology called 4 Names of Fortune, and that anthology is part of a series of anthologies. The 5th one comes out in April, and it's called 5 Golden Names, and Wolfe will have a story in it. It's already available for pre-order, so I'll put the link in the show notes for you. If you enjoyed listening to Paeter narrate the story, you might also enjoy listening to his audio dramas at spiritblade.com, or his podcast, Christian Geek Central, where he discusses movies, video games, and all things enjoyed by self-proclaimed geeks from a Christian worldview. If you're thinking about applying to have a story featured on the podcast, this is a great time to do it. I'm adjusting my workflow for the podcast a bit. There are some changes coming in Season 4, but yes, there will be a Season 4. So in addition to booking stories for April and May right now, I'm actually already on the hunt for stories for the fall. You simply need to have a short story that's somewhere around 5,000 to 10,000 words. A little longer can work too. It needs to be free of language and spice, and it needs to be in its final edited format. 95% of the applications I pass over simply haven't followed these rules. The other 5% usually have something that feels too tricky to narrate, like accents, or dozens of characters in one short story, or really hard names to pronounce. We have enough trouble pronouncing normal words, so don't make it harder on us. And if you're not a writer, but you have a friend who is, or an author you admire, feel free to nominate them as well. I can often find free short stories on their websites, and I have no problem reaching out to strangers to tell them they have amazing stories that I want to share. It's how I've become friends with half of the authors on this podcast. Anyway, you can nominate and apply on our website at findingfantasyreads.com/contact, and I'll be sure to have a direct link in the show notes as well. Thank you all for listening, and happy reading.